Hi, this is the digital book reader. I've been kind of doing a couple videos to kind of, I guess, set the base for when I start talking about all the books and the books I'm enjoying, the books I like, the books I've read that have really had a strong effect on me in my life. And one thing I definitely thought I should kind of just talk about is a lot of the books that I really enjoyed, a lot of the books that I read that I have great memories of, they were older pulp fiction action type books. And currently, as an adult, there's no way I can look away from the fact that those books definitely had a good deal of racist tropes, a good deal of misogynistic tropes. Some of them, may have even had some outright racist overtones, but definitely some tropes. For example, an inscrutable Oriental, or a noble savage, or a hot-blooded Spaniard. So, looking at those books and thinking of it now, I kind of feel like, I kind of really thought about, should you be recommending some of these books if they might be problematic? And for me, in my mind, I kind of came up with what I call the Michael Jackson R. Kelly pass. What that means is basically, I would think anybody between the ages of 45 to 60 has a favorite Michael Jackson song or a favorite R. Kelly song. That's just the truth. And now we know that those people had very problematic history with minors and offenses with minors. And we know that, and our brain sits there and says, that was a bad person. But if we're home by ourselves and our favorite song from that artist comes on, we're going to jam to it. We're just human. So I kind of feel like if you read a book and it brought you joy before you were aware of the overall gravitas of what the intent was, or what the artist personally stood for, or the writer personally stood for, I feel like you kind of get a pass to still love that thing. I feel like it is easy to tell somebody who received joy from something they read to not enjoy it anymore, because as an adult or as a person who's grown in life, you know that there's some problematic images and tropes in some of the books that you read and enjoyed. But it's very hard to scratch out joy. And it's also very hard to not want to talk about the things that brought you joy. The best example I could give is one my sister ran into, which is my sister loved Harry Potter. Loved Harry Potter. Now, she read it as an older person. She read it in her 30s, but she loved Harry Potter. So when the books came out, she read them. She loved them. Then, of course, J.K. Rowling has had some problematic statements, and she's, not as much of a huge fan of J.K. Rowling as she was before. But she was talking with her daughter, and her daughter was like, well, what kind of books did you read when, that you really liked? And she started talking about Harry Potter, and her daughter was like, oh, I should read them. And she said, yeah, you should. Because they brought her joy, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to share what brought you joy. I think it's going to be up to every single person who looks at a book that's recommended, or who looks at a book that a person loved, and they have to make their own personal decision how they feel about reading that book, warts and all. I also kind of look at older books, and in my mind I kind of feel like, did these books bring joy to a lot of people regardless of race, gender, or color? And did they inspire people of different races and different genders to write fantasy and science fiction books in their own image? I mean, some perfect examples: the science fiction book Snow Crash. One of the first action books I loved, by a black author. I bought the book, I read it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it wasn't until years later I realized it was a black author, but that person just gave me all the stuff I love in books. When I grew up, I pretty much grew up in a lower middle class black neighborhood, and I didn't have any friends who were white, Latino, or Asian until later in life. And when I was growing up, there was no internet. I basically hardly ever watched TV. And it's sometimes a little, I have to remember, for people growing up in the last 20 years, how big the world has been to them. How they have these global tastes and global knowledge that I just never ever had access to. So when I was reading those books, what did I know from racist tropes? So it's a tough call. I mean, everybody has to make that call, but I kind of feel like if something brought you joy that you read when you were young, and at the time you read it, you didn't know, for lack of a better word, you should have thought about it more deeply, or that the person writing it had very problematic views, I kind of give you a pass. And for the writers who were super racist and super anti-Semitic, I kind of chuckle to think how many people of color they have inspired with their works, and they must hate it. So I'm putting this video out there to kind of say, if I'm recommending books and people have issues with the books now and today in this world, I'm just going to go ahead and link them to this video so at least they know where I'm coming from, and that it's based off of my life experience, and I feel like everybody should make their own judgment based off of their personal life experience. So this is a 480 Digital Reader. Keep reading, and I'll see you later.